Cool beans. All right, then. Yeah, maybe we can just start out with like before we first started working together, which was at this point like what, two years ago or something crazy.
Yeah, I think it was like December 19, the first time I reached out to you.
Yeah, and in 2000, or like December 19, as in 2019, you mean, or December
Yeah.
19th?
Oh, yeah, sorry, as in, yeah, 2019. I'm
Yeah,
sure it was it. Yeah, I'm
I
pretty
think
sure it was.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, because then we had like about 3 months, and then again in kind of January 2020,
2020, yeah, 2020, yeah.
2021. Yeah,
2021. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's right. Yeah, December 2019. Yeah, roughly about that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Mm.
so obviously like before we started working together, like you had been working out for a while. So I mean, I like you already had like a decent baseline or foundation as far as muscle mass, but your goal initially was to get lean, right? Like that's what you
Yeah.
came to me with. Yeah. And then were you like you did get lean by the end of that? Were you like as lean before, like previously?
No, I'd say the first time I kind of had the coaching with yourself, that's probably the leanest I'd been up to that point. Um, Thinking about it, and kind of the best journey I had to get to that point as well. Because I've kind of been lean in the past, but I can go into that. But yeah, that was like kind of the first point. I got fairly lean. I'd say not as lean as I've been this time, but maybe around 81 kilos, which for me was probably putting me around, I don't know, 13 to I don't know, 16% body fat. I would have guessed. I don't know if you kind of concur with that. But that was
Yeah.
over like a 6 month-ish cut.
Yeah. The first time around, I would agree that like, yeah, roughly in that like 13 to 16%. I mean, obviously, I'm mainly looking at the upper body in the
Yeah,
pictures that I have of you
yeah.
there, but I like that looks like it more or less. And okay, cool. So like before that, did you have attempts of getting lean, and like how did those go? Like did you have times when you did get lean, but then you just couldn't maintain, or like you had like big challenges even like getting there in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I had a fairly, I would say, interesting journey, maybe a typical journey. So I can kind of go into, um, kind of basically what led me to getting in touch with you. If you'd like, I can go into that.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean, I've always kind of been into weight training. Even since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be like, that muscular guy. You watch Arnie and Sylvester Stallone movies, and obviously when you're that young, you think that that's actually quite attainable as well.
Yeah.
So, as I kind of progressed through university, kept training quite hard. But for me, it would always be a bit of program hopping, kind of you read Muscle and Fitness, 12-week of this, or, 6 week of this, or you go online and you find some influencers. I mean, this was before like Instagram. So you'd go on the forums, you'd find like someone's routine, and you'd do that for a little while and it'd get you somewhere. But then for me, I didn't really understand how to consistently train properly myself. So I'd say, I mean, disclosure, I'm kind of mid-30s now. So between the ages of about 20 to 30, was a bit on and off with weightlifting, and I did a lot of martial arts. So I used to do quite a bit of Thai boxing, and the weight took a bit of kind of the bodybuilding took a bit of a sideline to that. But then I had my son, which meant that I basically stopped going Thai boxing and I started focusing on my weightlifting more. So at the time I was around probably about 83 kg, and I thought I'm going to bulk up. I want to get super strong. I want to get really big. So I went on a fairly assertive bulk, and I ended up to like 96 kg, and I was just pretty fat, by my estimation. Like, no definition at all, but it was the strongest I'd ever been. So at that time, for me, like I hit like a 200 kilo deadlift, 170 kilo squat, 135 kilo bench. which, the numbers I'd never hit before. And, I felt just really strong at the time, but then none of my clothes fit me anymore. I didn't feel that healthy. And then we moved house as well. And at the time I was thinking I need to sort something out. I've gone way over to the other side. So I was like, let me try and lose some weight. So I knew about like, if it fit your macros. I was an early follower of like Lane Norton, and this is how many carbs, how much fat, protein. I thought that was all it was. I thought that's you stick to your calories, you're gonna lose weight, and it doesn't really matter what you eat as long as you hit these macro amounts. So that's the way I used to think. So I tried that, to cut down to about, let's say, 2,400 calories, and I started to lose weight, but it wasn't really working that well for me. I started to stall quite quickly, and I was thinking, what's going on here? So then I kind of went down a rabbit hole. So I got into intermittent fasting, and that seemed like, this is fantastic. And I started reading Jason Fung and all of that stuff. And fasting is the best thing ever. Obesity, the kind of carbohydrate obesity model. So then that took me through to keto. And I ended up doing like keto plus one meal a day. Felt like crap, to be honest, most of the time. My training was pretty rubbish as well. And I was kind of binging quite a bit. I mean, whether you call it binging, but like, uncontrollably eating foods, particularly carbohydrates, fairly frequently. So I'd do quite well for the most of the week, and then over the weekend or something like that, I'd come back. And I mean, I was even like checking ketones and all of this stuff, thinking like it was this magical thing that if somehow I had raised ketones, then the fat will just melt off. What's this about? So I got fit, I got lean, but not as lean as I've been, since coaching with yourself. But I got lean, and then maybe like it took me, say, 4 months. Literally took me like 3 weeks to just completely undo it. Just completely, like, once you go back to eating carbs and everything else, it just fell apart really quickly. And that's when I started thinking, there's obviously more to it. It's not just about the physiological. There's some psychological element. Listening to podcasts and things. I started listening to podcasts because I've got a long commute to work. So at the same time, I changed jobs. And that's when I kind of started listening to your stuff. Steve Hall, Revive Stronger.
We will cut this out. Just kidding.
What's that?
We will cut this out, the Steve Hall part.
Like some of the guys that you had on your podcast, I would then look at their stuff as well. So, like Eric Helms at the time, I think he was only doing 3DMJ, and you start to think, oh, there's more to this. And Lyle McDonald as well. I mean, although he gets a lot of flack, I think he does speak a lot of sense in some aspects.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the things that, kind of came out to me was like, you would talk about your past with, disordered eating and weight fluctuations, and, the difficulties you had around that, and how you've kind of progressed in your journey. And I thought, this sounds similar. It may be obviously not the same, but it sounds similar. Like there's something else here. There's that psychological aspect when it comes to managing what you eat. So that's when I kind of got in touch with you. I think one of your podcasts you mentioned about the coaching and things like that, and that's kind of what initially drew me towards it. It was like, well, it's obviously not just about the macros. There's something else. Your food selection's important, and that's the bit that I didn't really know. And it's funny because at the time I thought, oh, I know everything. I just need to apply it. I just need someone to help me apply it. And then now I look back and I think I didn't really know anything at all. I was pretty naive, and now I feel like I'm much more equipped to kind of manage my nutrition and everything else. But yeah, that's pretty much what led me to get in touch with you anyway in the first place.
Yeah, no, that was a really cool overview. It's actually funny because I mean, I'm sure you've told me this before. I just probably forgot by now the fasting and the keto stuff. But it's funny because like I've sort of had the same, like I went through those same stuff as well. And it's just funny how these things move together. Like first you get into fasting, or maybe first you get into low carb and then into fasting, and then oh, but then like fasting and low carb should work even better because like you're fat adapted. So when you're fasting, like you're gonna burn even more fat and whatever, and then you get like just like this almost like this nice placebo effect while you're fasting. Like even if you're getting hungry, it's like, oh, but these amazing things are happening now. So it's funny how these things can impact different people similarly.
Yeah. It's just like a rabbit hole. You pick one topic and then it leads you to the other. And even like I started thinking, oh, I'm eating too much protein. I need to cut it down because of gluconeogenesis. And now I'm thinking that's a terrible idea, to try and eat like 100 grams of protein for someone my weight, when actually everything in terms of performance enhancement tells you otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Excuse me, Jesus. So you mentioned that you followed if it fits your macros and like I did that as well. I mean, I think everybody should be tracking macros at some point, and I guess like only like an extension of that is if it fits your macros. But when we started, like the first time around, when we started doing the coaching together, I believe we started you right off the bat without macro tracking, right? Like it was like 2 years ago, so a little bit hard to recall exactly, but that's how I'm remembering it.
I remember you gave me a kind of a calorie target of around 19 to 2100 and a protein target, but then no like specific carbs and fat, kind of like hit this. And I think at the time, I think I was tracking to begin with the first time, and we were building up to a more kind of auto-regulated approach at that time. And then the second time started off kind of like auto-regulated.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So how did you, like the first time around when we were doing the coaching together and you got fairly lean, like what were some things that were like in the way that you were doing things? Like obviously at the end of the day, like you're still eating like whole foods for the most part, like trying to stay full, and obviously the workouts element of it is a different story. But like what were like some of the differences, if you can like recall, in like how you were doing things then versus how maybe you were doing things previously when you attempted to get lean?
No, definitely. I think that kind of understanding about food selection, I look back at it now and I think that was quite lacking. So you kind of like, I know like clean foods, but then, didn't think a load of rice is actually a bad idea. Rice, for example, isn't that filling, although it's clean, it's not maybe a great option. I remember the things that you'd give me to start with about, the ideal plate of food or baseline plate of food, I think you called it, like how to put that together. And really thinking about like the satiety factor of foods, appetite regulation, understanding things around environmental factors. So, before it was kind of like, well, I must have terrible willpower because I just can't not eat this thing that's right in front of me. Whereas kind of some of the things that we did together was actually, well, how do you manage that environment? Like, how do you not have that? It's not about willpower. Like if you don't have it there, then you're probably not going to think about it. And so that aspect of it made a big difference. And I think definitely thinking back to it, I remember when you'd first said like, pick like four meals or something and like rotate those meals. And at the time I was thinking, I can't do that. There's like 4 meals. Like how am I supposed to enjoy things if it's only 4 meals? And it's funny because now I didn't even kind of consciously do it, but when I think like how I eat now, it's literally the same 3 meals with a slight variation in the protein source. So it's like, it's always my lunch or sort of breakfast / lunch is always a large salad with some meat or tuna. My dinner is always a base of broccoli or cauliflower with salmon, chicken or beef with maybe a bit of sauce. Now I've added some rice in, but I never even used to have any like starchy carb sauce. And my dessert / last meal of the day is always Greek yogurt with fruit. And it's just like constant to the point where I have basically a separate fridge just full of Greek yogurt.
Nice.
So I just buy it in bulk and just keep it in there. So I remember like thinking back to when I first started doing it with you. I was like, you know what, how's that going to work? And you know, why do I need to eat this way? Whereas as soon as I started doing it, I think, yeah, of course, if I eat this much veg and it's 200 calories, that's going to do me a lot more than this much rice, which is also the same amount, and nuts in particular and things like that. So before,
Yeah.
when I was doing if it fit your macros, I'd eat like a bag of cashews for like 700 calories, and then
Mm.
wonder to myself, why am I so hungry 2 hours later? Not
Yeah.
really putting two and two together. I was thinking, well, it's the same amount of calories. I should feel just as full. But actually, that understanding of it's not just about calories. You know, food density is important, food volume, satiety factor is important, and that's really has helped me. When I look how I eat now and how I manage, say, going out to eat and things like that, that's probably been the biggest thing. I think is just understanding how to pick what to eat to manage your appetite. And yeah, you don't really get that with like if it fits your macros, because the whole thing, oh, you can eat a Pop Tart. Well, okay, but if all you ate was Pop Tarts, then you're going to be really hungry for the rest of the day, and you're not going to be able to manage that. So I think, yeah, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things where it like food selection and picking things with more volume and that are more satiating, like it seems like a very basic thing for a lot of people. And if that's the case, that's great, because I mean, probably they are doing fine and they're like not making themselves like needlessly hungry when they're dieting. But it's just it keeps amazing me. Just like sometimes people contact me who have gotten like very impressively lean in the like before, and then they show me like what they're currently eating. It's like, hey, like I'm actually cutting, like let's say I'm like 13% body fat, 14%, like pretty lean already, want to get down to 10. So like for those like final like 2 months, let's say, or final month, like I would like you to help me. And then they're sending me their meal plans, and it's like man, like yours probably dealing with a lot of hunger completely needlessly. So I mean, it's just important to emphasize. And then yeah, I mean, the meal variety, like obviously, so I do give that recommendation to a lot of people that like, look, just pick a few meals that you like, just kind of rotate through them. And if you get like really bored of something, then of course, like you can always change it up. But like you can kind of fundamentally have like very similar meals and just like change an element of them up. And sometimes it can be as simple as like using different spices or just like preparing it in like a slightly different way. But I don't like, honestly, I really think that one could have like a very, very complete nutritional plan that is enjoyable, satisfying, satiating, and like micronutritionally very complete from like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 different foods. Which like, yeah, and those like 15, sorry, my baby is crying over here. So like those 15 different foods or 20, whatever, those could make up like, 4 or 5 meals, maybe you rotate through them, and it can actually be really enjoyable. Yeah. So so that one, it probably took you like a total of like 6 months to achieve your final leanness then. So like what happened after that? So like, you got nice and lean and like very aesthetic. Like how did it go after that? Like,
So I mean, at the time, we weren't working together anymore. So basically, I got down to a certain leanness, and then the kind of agreement we had didn't kind of renew it at that time, and then did maybe another month or two of trying to cut on my own, which went fairly successfully. And then then it was kind of like, well, okay, I'm kind of done with this. I've done it for 6 months. I'm pretty lean. I want to go back to kind of building some muscle now. I can see I've got a fairly decent base. I want to see where I can take it. So then it was kind of like, okay, let's transition out of being in a deficit and go into like a maintenance bulking. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to increase calories to start with, by like 400, get me back up to kind of what I guess was maintenance. And it kind of just quickly fell apart because I went from eating these very particularly filling foods to basically changing what I ate, and just feeling more hungry and ended up eating overeating, and it took me sort of 6 months to get that lean, and then probably another 3 months to get almost to where I started, but not quite. And it was just literally, I don't know, opening the floodgates almost to like all this high calorie dense foods, really tasty foods that I'd not had. Not that I felt denied whilst I was dieting, but I think just that change, you know, and now I think back, it makes a lot of sense. And I think of some of the things, you know, when I've listened to podcasts and yourself and about it, like now I understand it's not an on and off switch, it's a spectrum, it's a dial. So, you know, you turn the dial up, you turn it down. But at that time, yeah, that was completely like, I just completely changed all the good habits I built. They just went out the window and went back to eating normally, or normally for me, which was, you know, the high calorie dense foods, the high starchy carb sources, all of that stuff. And then that made me think, well, you know, okay, maybe I figured out how to lose the weight, but that's not great if I can't keep it off. So, or if I undo it so quickly. So that's kind of when I got in touch with you again. And I know the first time round we did kind of touch on that. It would be good to see the process through the other end as well. And you know, now I've learned that that kind of transition can be really difficult, you know, for people to go from a deficit to a maintenance, and almost is the trickiest part. But I was, again, a bit naive at that point, thinking, well, you know, if I can manage on 1,800 calories, of course I'm going to be absolutely fine on 400 more than that. Why would I have a problem? So that's kind of then what led me to getting in touch with you the second time round.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, like some people might be listening to this. So I could picture like some of these people who, I don't know, have cookbooks and or some like cool food hacks and whatever, and they're all about like, okay, like this is why you had that issue after that diet, because you were eating like only like veggies and fruits and whatever, lean meats and whatever. Oh man, can you give me 1 minute? Like, I think I need to give some food to the kitty, because it's like looking at me now and like meowing into my face from down there. 1 second. I'm just gonna sit here, and in the meantime, I'll try to feed her from my hand, because like for some reason that's the only way she's willing to eat. So yeah, like some people might say that like, well, but if you only whatever like use these recipes and then you had these like cool like whatever protein cheesecakes or whatever kind of cool food hacks, then you wouldn't have had that problem. But like there is really like if you're dieting, there's really no like avoiding that feeling of like you're a little bit restrained, like no matter how you're going about it. Like you could not be tracking macros, or you could be tracking them but eating like all kinds of like fun foods but just in moderation. You could be doing keto. Like once you've been dieting for like a couple of months and you lost a decent amount of body fat, like you will have to have like some feeling of, okay, like I'm not completely free to do whatever I want. And it's quite natural to kind of like look forward to all of that easing up. So, and like, it's a challenge to me as well to this day. Like it's not, now it's at a point where it's not out of control when I'm done with a diet, but like still I had that urge of like, okay, like now I like want to explore some new things. Like so far I was so restrained because there was this like limited calorie number that I had to work with, but now I have like, God, like so much more. And especially tempting, I think, if you've been in a pretty hefty deficit at the end. So like I said, like I don't know, like 1,000 calories or close to it. And then you go from that to say like even just 100 calorie surplus, like, man, like 11 extra 100 calories that you get to work with. Like I can fit this in and this in. And then, yeah, like all of a sudden just that extra like palatability, and it's never going to be quite as good as what you anticipated, like quite as freeing. Like you will still feel like a little bit restrained because like you would want to eat more of those good things. So yeah, I think that's why it's good to be just a bit more strategic and just giving yourself time. Because like, for example, I was done with my diet. I finished. So now as we're speaking, this is October the 3rd. And probably I finished like in the beginning of April. So what's that, like 5 months, 6 months? I don't know. Like it even after like 3-4 months, like I was still like experimenting with new things, like just to like make the whole thing feel more sustainable, like staying at that body fat percentage. And after that, like at that point, I would say I fully habituated to being that lean. And just the general like lifestyle choices, food choices, like little strategies with eating out. Like I was like fully habituated to that. to where I was not like tempted day to day to like explore new things and whatever. But like still, like I didn't have like the complete system worked out for myself. Like it was still kind of like an experimentation process. So so I think it's very normal and natural. And like especially it was like kind of one of your first times like getting lean successfully. It's quite normal to not succeed with it like right, you know, at the get-go. So
definitely. And it's funny because I used to hear people talk about it as a skill. I'm like, what do you mean it's a skill? Like you just eat less, you follow these macro guidelines and you lose weight. But like, yeah, I fully get that now. It is a skill. Like you've got to kind of learn how to manage your environment, kind of build your habits up, understand your own body's satiety and appetite kind of factors. And like you said, you know, what what can you do to not feel too restricted, but yet not completely let go of everything? And it's finding something that works for you. And it seems like every time I do it and I've done it, it does seem to get easier. And you know, you hear people say every time I compete, it does get easier. I get a little bit leaner, and now I kind of understand that a bit more now. Obviously, I'm not a competitor. I've never, you know, got nowhere near as lean as some of those guys do, but you can kind of understand where people are coming from when they say that. Because it is about learning, you know, something that works for you, some kind of system. But I think that one of the most useful things, and something that, you know, we've talked about kind of this time round, when I was coming to the end of the cut for the second time, is about, well, actually, you kind of built these habits around eating these particular foods in a certain way. So it's not about changing that. It's keeping those habits, but maybe just adding in, okay, cut back a little bit of the broccoli and add a bit of rice, you know, add a bit more high density, but actually the way you eat and the kind of core foods you eat basically stay the same. And it's just about, having a little experimentation here and there. And, you know, it's funny, like you said, because you got My Fitness Pal up, you think, oh, I've got an extra, it's almost like I've got an extra £1,000 in my bank account. Like, what can I buy? Let me try this, let me try that. And then you just get carried away. Whereas, you know, if you're quite conservative, you kind of, the way I do it now is, I've got my normal, the same food, exactly the same food I ate when I was on a cut. But instead of maybe having such a lean source of protein, I'd add maybe a fattier source on this day. Or instead of having so much veg, I'll add a bit more starchy carb to it. Instead of just having zero fat Greek yogurt, I'll add some seeds, you know, so just some seeds to add a bit of fat to it. And those little adjustments add up to maybe an extra 300 calories a day, which takes me, you know, to that maintenance / surplus. But nothing's different. Nothing's kind of too drastically different that, you know, I'm able to maintain that same momentum into that kind of maintenance / bulking phase. Whereas that was the difference, the kind of the other time where it was almost like a switch, but now it's not a switch. It's just, you're just adjusting things, but you're basically doing the same. It's kind of like your training. You might keep the same routine, but maybe add a bit more volume as you get into your bulking, or maybe cut volume back if you're deep into a cut, but actually the core way you train kind of stays the same. And so to looking at it like that has been so much more helpful, I think.
It's been quite a big revelation. It's pretty straight, like, or obvious, I guess, if I just think about it. But like, it's really hard to go like gradually from a cut to whatever maintenance or bulking, like not cutting, basically, if you overhaul your food selection significantly, because it's very hard. I mean, it's almost like using a cable stack with training versus using like a barbell with plates. Like there is no like incremental loading to the thing. So if you eat, I don't know, oatmeal instead of fruits, like it's like a tenfold difference in the energy density, or maybe not a tenfold if you account for the water and stuff. But still, it's much easier to like fundamentally eat the same things, but just add a little bit, and then you can actually add like 100 calories to your diet in the form of something else, versus like, okay, like it's a completely different food, so okay, completely different portion sizes that I have to work with. Like it's just more difficult. And of course, like higher energy density stuff, it's also easier to mess up. So maybe we could touch on the training side a little bit as well. And then maybe just we can finish off with like your last cut, like because you got like very lean this time. So I would assume that on the training front, like things were actually quite different compared to how you did things before. It's rare that I hear that it wasn't.
Yeah, definitely. So as I said, the way I kind of trained before was kind of more, well, this program, I'll do this particular program and I'll do it for, 12 weeks, or Candito's 6-week program, or whoever, just whatever fad program you find on Reddit. And not really understanding the kind of fundamentals to why, what should a program contain, or what's the kind of basics that you need to have. It's just you just kind of think, well, someone else has figured that out, I'll just follow it. So that, coupled with not being that consistent with training, I suppose maybe because it was not, I didn't really have that kind of specific goal at the time around cutting, and I probably wasn't as consistent, and there was days where I wouldn't train, and didn't quite have my heart in it, I guess. But then the routine you gave me to start with, it started off at 4 days a week, and it was like 4 full body sessions, and yeah, that was a bit different. So I guess the routines that I was following then were more like kind of push pull, or whatever. So the full body was different, and yeah, I didn't really at the time fully understand the benefits of a full body routine, and obviously now I do, and I've kind of gone through all the your backlog of podcasts as well to kind of understand where what training should be built up on. So there was that change in the programming, and also the fact that it was just you kind of provided that spreadsheet, the log that we would use, and that gave me that kind of consistency and accountability, I guess, as well, around, well, not only do I have to kind of speak to you on a weekly basis and see where the training is. So that obviously prompted me to make sure that I hit those sessions, but also having that log and the ability to kind of look back, and the model of progression as well, like, using kind of a rep target, and having weight increments in the weight in between the sessions. Every time you hit the rep target, you increase the weight, and that kind of progression model, having that laid out, was very different and a lot more structured. And yeah, I think I really kind of took to it. I really started to enjoy the training, and that having that constant progress. I think I did make mistakes at the start, probably expecting myself to progress quicker than I did, and some of the jumps in the increments were pretty massive. Now that I think about it, I would say I was kind of like an early intermediate, maybe at the time, maybe intermediate trainee, and to kind of throw on 2.5 kilos every week on a squat isn't realistic. And then thinking back to it now, there's times where I kind of got frustrated. I'm like, why am I not getting stronger? But also bearing in mind that I was in a cut as well at the same time. So that's things kind of I've learned going forward. But yeah, I think the training was different, but it was nice to have that variety every day, to have, with the full body as well. And I felt my recovery kind of matched it quite well as well. But yeah, and some of the exercise selection, I mean, I had a fairly limited setup, so it's a home gym, and at the time it was just a power rack with some dumbbells. But some of the kind of options you came up with were quite creative. Like some exercises I just never thought to do, and that was quite good. Like, for example, like gliding leg curls. I never thought to do something like that, so that was really good as well, to have a bit of that variety come in. So I think that was really good doing it with you that time round. And then kind of this time round now, where we've gone to like a 5-day split, and I invested in kind of a more complete home gym. So I've got Smith machine kit, full cable stacks, all of that. Quite a nice setup now. And then I also bought some fractional plates, so 250 gram and 500 gram plates, and I've been using that instead of like trying to expect massive jumps, and kind of just being a bit more realistic about it. And I've really enjoyed that sort of. If you look at my log now, it's quite rare that I stall out, because it's just so gradually progressive. But now I look back, and 6 months ago, and I think, wow, like that is a big difference. And I know some of it is like, okay, learning the movement and a bit of that, but there's definitely been improvement, and I can see it in my physique as well. But it's just having that, and I've actually not missed a workout now for probably like 6 weeks. Sorry, not 6 weeks, 6 months. So since like January, and the way I'd even like rearrange. I'll get up early if I need. I normally train after work, but if I'm doing something after work, I'll get up early just to do my workout because I just want to get it done. And it's really nice to be in that kind of groove. And the two go hand in hand. So when you kind of lose some weight and your diet and having that consistency in the training, it gives you kind of peace of mind. You think, well, I'm definitely holding on to my muscle. If I'm still progressing in some way, I'm definitely, improving, hopefully. And that makes the diet a little bit easier because you think, well, actually, yeah, I'm not just kind of losing all this muscle. And whereas I remember back to when I was in that kind of keto phase where the training wasn't as good and I just didn't look good. I didn't feel good. And I was thinking, what's the point in trying to get lean when I don't even have any muscle underneath it? Whereas now it's a completely different mindset.
Yeah, it's I think there's a lot there that is like maybe just worth touching on. So like the full body thing, I like it, and I think it has a lot of benefits. I think some of them could actually translate to, or will actually translate to, like marginally more muscle growth over time. So just the fact that you're fresher on the exercises that you do for any given muscle group, and so like you will be. What is your problem? My goodness. It's like what can I do? Like I fed her, like she has the toilet, like I'm petting her, like what more can I do? So I think some of it will actually be like independently beneficial of just the personal preference element, or just that it can be psychologically nicer to have that variety, not having to do like a leg day, which some men like, but most men hate leg days, from my experience at least. And then, but I think the trackability is what makes full body routines very easy. So like on something like a push-pull legs, for example, you can still track progress fairly well. And I really do think that like in the long term, like pretty much like even a bro split, like if we take like full body push-pull legs, upper lower, like bro split, like maybe like those are like the most common ones or most famous ones. I think pretty much all of them will get you to the same end result. It's just maybe how efficiently, and then how easy it is to track things, and then just the rest is just personal preference. But I think like the biggest difference in, or at least what's the biggest maybe surprise for most people that I work with is just the fact that it's not this phasic approach of like, okay, like a 6-week block of this. It's like whatever, a strength phase and then a hypertrophy phase or whatever. It's like, no, it's just basically just linear progression, which doesn't mean that like by linear progression, I don't mean that I promise that everybody's going to get like linearly stronger every single week. I just mean that basically the fundamental goal and approach is always the same. And the goal is to keep that progression as linear as it can be. So then we're just tweaking a few things when that linearity stops being linear, or that linearity stops in any way. So like if you're stalling or maybe regressing, whatever, like some parameter in your program needs to be modified. And then like, of course, like no pre-planned deloads, like, okay, every 4 weeks, every 8 weeks, whatever. It's like more auto-regulation, reactive deloads, things like that, which like I think it can be very, very hard to buy into it for a lot of people if they were following a lot of the smart people in our industry and like talking about like the need for deloads. But then whatever, like we could just spend another like half an hour just talking about deloading. But I think just that non-phasic element, I don't know if that was like hard for you to like.
No, now that you mention it, definitely. It's kind of like you said, where it's like normally you'd have a clear mesocycle of whatever 6 weeks, and then you would deload, and then you would start again. And it was literally just the other day I was thinking like, so what is the point of doing that? So you hear like some people say, oh, I ramp up I get closer to zero RIR across a mesocycle, or I add, like one set every week extra across a mesocycle, and I reach this kind of like fatigue level, then I deload and I do it again. I think what's actually the point of doing it that way? If you can train if you could train quite hard, and then, like you said, you're making that linear progression, why do you need to pre-plan a deload? Why do you need to have a mesocycle where you reset everything back to kind of not suboptimal, I guess, but like below that fatigue or that difficulty threshold, and ramp it back up again? Like, if you're already there and you're making progress and you're not too tired and you are recovering, then yeah, what is the need in having this extra volume, or getting even closer to a zero RIR or whatever? Yeah, it just made me think, like, actually, yeah, I've gone so far the other way now. I think, well, yeah, I'll just carry on doing this until I stop making progress. So otherwise, what's the point? Like, why would I change it arbitrarily?
Yeah, like those are that's like one of the common questions. I'm pretty sure you asked me that at least one time, and I think everybody does at one point. That like when, like, until how long can I run this setup, or like when do you think we should change exercises? And like, there are answers to all of those. Like, there is a time to change an exercise, and like it could, like, the reason for that could be as simple as, like, you just don't like that exercise. Like, that's a valid reason to change it. Of course, unless like someone always wants to do something new, but within reason, that's completely legit. But there is no inherent need. Like, if you're making great gains on, say, I don't know, like a flat barbell bench press, and there are no joint issues or whatever, like, there is no need to switch that out to an incline press necessarily. So yeah, that's and I think the whole phasic approach, I think for people that don't like training, so they don't actually enjoy training, and they're just doing it for the results, which, like, all of us want to get good results, and I think all of us would dislike it more if we didn't get good results, at least to some extent. But for those that are like just in it for the money, so to speak, I think for them it can be like psychologically more rewarding if they know that, like, okay, this is like a 6-week block, and at the end of it, I will either get to deload or I will get to do something else. For me personally, I would hate to have like a mandatory deload every 4th week or whatever. Like, I would probably I would actually like kill myself intentionally, like in the gym the week before, to like really deserve that deload, and then I would hate that week off, and then maybe it would be harder to return because like you kind of get used to just chilling, whatever. So I mean, the psychology can be there for some people, but so yeah, man. So maybe just to like wrap up, because like we've been going on for a while, like maybe just some stuff on your like latest cut. So like you've gotten like very lean this time. So like it was a fairly moderate deficit for the most part. And like we started off without tracking, that I do remember. And like we did pick it up like near the end, because like at that point, like you were actually getting like very lean. So at that point, like we just didn't want to leave anything to chance. Am I?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think I was kind of like, I guess, trusting my satiety signal, my own kind of intuition, or whatever you want to call it, with that auto-regulated eating, so picking the right foods, etc., to start with. And it got me to a point, and then it was kind of like, yeah, actually, I'm not sure I can kind of trust myself to not eat too much, even with picking the right foods. So then it just gradually, it felt like kind of naturally transitioned into, well, I'll start logging some of it, and then boom, 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 before you know it, I'm logging everything towards the end. And it just kind of, when you're trying to eke out that last bit, it gives you that almost peace of mind, because at first it's kind of burdensome, and it's more peace of mind not to track. But then you get to a point where actually it's more peace of mind to track, because you're constantly doubting, am I doing the right thing? So it actually helps, I think, when you get to that point. But I think, yeah, definitely this time around, it was, I wouldn't say easy, but it was a lot more, felt more natural. Didn't feel as difficult as it had in the past. I think it also helps kind of some of the things we set up. So the average monitoring of the weight, some of the things you'd advised about checking, the weights a certain point, in the morning after the toilet, etc., not wearing any clothes, having that consistency, and also some other objective markers like waist circumference, and not like, we use the calipers, but not to measure fat levels, but to have that is the measurement reducing over time, and then plus how the performance is in the gym. That there's just so much there that you've got a lot of peace of mind as well. You can trust the process, and having someone like, obviously having yourself there to bounce stuff off. And if I had a moment of doubt, it'd be like, well, actually, let's discuss it, and then we can kind of bottom it out, or put something in place, and strategies. For example, like if there's a time in between, in the middle of the cut, where pretty much every week I was like away somewhere. I had either like a holiday, or it was like not a wedding, but it was like a family gathering or something like that, or a trip away with the kids, and I'd be out my environment and thinking about what strategies to manage that, and falling back on those habits that I'd built up, and not worrying or overthinking it too much, still being able to enjoy myself. So I found it fairly non-difficult to get to where I am. And I think this is definitely the leanest I've ever been. I mean, I started off, I think it was 88 kg, or 86 kg, and my lowest ever weigh-in was like 77.5. But that was I felt like that was a blip, because the rest of the week didn't average out. But I basically averaged out or about just over 78. I'm probably about 79 and a half now, and I've kind of stopped cutting just over 4 weeks ago. So basically, slight tiny surplus, or even maintenance, because when you factor in just that extra food bulk and everything, probably would take me to that. But I think not only was it the leanest I've ever been, but when I think of like where I'm at in my physique, it's probably the best I've ever looked as well. So I think I'm leaner than I ever was, but I'm probably carrying a lot more lean mass than I ever was as well. So when you couple the two together, and I look back on some pictures I've got and things like that, definitely I can see it more. And when I think back to my whole training career, like, as I said, I'm mid-30s now. I've actually never felt or looked better at any point, and it's nice to know that, or to think, the best is kind of almost still yet to come in that sense. So it's been really good. And I'm hoping now that I can kind of eke out some gaining phase and do it in a way where I'm not going to rebound, and gradually try and bulk up a little bit, but do it in such a way that I'm not going to undo 6 months of good work in 3 months like I did last time. But I feel like I'm where I need to be to achieve that.
Yeah. No, I mean, you looked phenomenal at the end of it. Like your pictures. Like someone, if I posted that, I mean, probably I should. I posted like one picture of you, and that one got a really good reception. But if I posted like your last picture at the end of your cut, like probably like some people would like accuse me of like lying about your gear use or something like that, because like you looked, and I know that that's not the case, but like you looked like unreal, like the pump and the whatever. I mean, just the muscles stand out a lot more.
Oh, thanks a lot. I mean, if you want to use it like as, I don't know, thumbnail or even whatever, and I can send you another one.
Thumbnail is a no-brainer. Yeah. Cool, man. So yeah, I guess just like last question, like, do you feel like now, especially like comparing it to the previous cut, like, do you feel like now you're in a like better equipped to like make that transition? I mean, you're already doing it, and like you didn't say you're 86 kilos after having been 78 at the end of it, but do you feel like now you're in a better position to like really take those habits forward into your like non-dieting times?
Yeah, 100%. I think that kind of touching back to what we spoke about earlier is just, for me, it's just turning the dial slightly. So having those slightly more calorie dense options in my foods, but otherwise not kind of going crazy. I'm not in a diet mode versus non-diet mode. This is kind of as a name, sustainable self-development. So it's being sustainable. It's something that I feel like I can do, and not feel restricted, and actually just enjoy things, enjoy training again. And this time around as well, we've kind of kept up that coaching relationship, which is good to have you there. Even if I've got nothing at the moment to say, it's kind of like knowing that when something does occur or there's a blip, you've got someone that you can just kind of touch base with, that will add that element of objectivity, kind of steer you back on track, and then carry forward. So yeah, I mean, I'm loving the training now. Yeah, as I said, I've done the same routine now for 6 months, and what you mentioned as well is like where we've tweaked things is if I've stalled, we've maybe have amended the rep range, something that small, or if a particular exercise is not felt right for me, we've just changed it to another variant of that exercise, and nothing drastic, and that's all it's taken, and just to see that progress. So I'm keen to see how that progress goes now, when I'm eating properly, or not eating properly, but no longer cutting, and that's the new goal. So instead of trying to hit a weekly target of weight loss, now I'm just trying to hit a weekly target of weight gain. I'm hoping to see either a more rapid increase in my performance, or to see my performance kind of take off a bit more in the gym, and just enjoy those workouts a bit more when I'm not as kind of carbohydrate depleted. And yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Hopefully I can come back this time next year and say, yeah, it was amazing, it was really successful, and send you some update pics. But yeah, let's see what the future holds.
Yeah. I mean, I'm. It will be exciting to watch, because like now you're in like as good a position as anybody for a lean gaining phase, and you can do it for very long, and like still at the end of it, like you can still be like pretty lean. So yeah, it will be really cool to see. So yeah, man, thank you for sharing all of that.
No problem.
It's been very valuable. So please let people know where they can find you.
I'm an internet recluse. I don't exist anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Like maybe it would be worth a try for me to ask. Like you just wanted to plug your new whatever coaching business or something.
Oh yeah,
your new YouTube channel I didn't know about.
Mo's sustainable development.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, no, cool, man. Like this was awesome.
No, it's nice. Thanks for asking me. It's been really enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I mean, if anything, it was like cool reflection time. So